Welcome back, everyone. We're now about ready to get into the meat and potatoes of this course. Now that the unit on getting started is complete and the academic integrity is complete, I'm going to choose to go directly to the modules where we're going to begin with Module 2. Scrolling down, Module 2 is titled Historical Background of Boundaries and How Boundaries Are Created. You'll notice that I have a series of steps, and this will show up repeatedly throughout the course. An overview, our lecture, along with PowerPoint slides, perhaps an assignment. In this particular case, you'll notice the icon has got a little bubble. This means that we will have a discussion included in this course, and then this unit completes with a quiz. I'm going to move forward here and get you started. Looking at where our introductory video is at, where my text currently says Introduction Video to Unit 2, this is going to be replaced with an actual link to this recording that I'm recording now. Then I have two sets of PowerPoint slides. We have a hyperlink, which allows you to download and save this particular file to your own computer. We have a preview button, and we have another button that allows you to view it into a new window. I'm going to move right into the history chapter, and I'm going to begin with the preview. You'll notice that the PowerPoint slides show up inside of a normal Canvas window, and it's showing me that I'm on slide 1 of 18 slides. You'll see this vary from unit to unit. These are intended to be talking points about the chapter, not necessarily a replacement for your reading, as it's fully expected that everyone will read the full material, but I have talking points that you can keep in mind as you read the material and think about your assignment. So looking forward, Historical Background of Boundaries, Unit 2. This set of slides correlates with Chapter 1 of our textbook. And we're talking about land boundaries, the historical concept of boundaries. Everyone marks boundaries. Mankind has marked our boundaries since our very, very beginnings in tribal or pack groups. Even the animal kingdom does it. Dogs do it, cats do it, people do it. It's been said that even fish sometimes mark their boundaries in their underwater environment where they live. But as we scroll forward, we're talking about land boundaries for the human sense. We have administrative boundaries, such as county boundaries, municipality boundaries, state boundaries, federal boundaries. We have our personal boundaries, the limits within our fencing that we consider to be our personal real estate. Our boundaries might be physically marked in Las Cruces, oftentimes with a stone wall and or corner monuments at the location of the corners, and indeed boundaries might be unmarked and just accepted. Land boundaries do not determine the rights in land, they determine the limits of our rights in land. That's kind of an important distinction, because lawyers determine the actual rights and title issues, and surveyors determine the limits and or the boundaries of our rights in land. Land boundaries are held sanctimonious in many religions. Indeed, wars have been fought throughout the history of mankind relating to land boundaries. We hope that that will diminish over time, but certainly seems that we still continue to have problems in that area. Livery of season, you'll notice in this particular case, is written in italics. This is one of several key phrases that has a specific legal meaning, and the legal meaning might be different than what you would find in Webster's dictionary. In your textbook, you'll notice that we have a glossary included at the end of the book. It's about 50 pages long, more or less, and it includes the legal definition of many of the terms that are used throughout this course. In addition to that, you may find online references to a legal terms dictionary that you could find useful from time to time. One is called the Legal Lexicon, if you find that. Others are in existence that are in print. There's a book called Black's Law Dictionary. It's about this thick. It's certainly beyond the scope of this class, but this is what the courts oftentimes will go to find the actual legal definition of terms that are used in legal instruments and documents. Next concept is real estate versus personal estate. I'm going to substitute the word estate with the word property. Real property versus personal property. When we talk about personal property, we're talking about my car. When we talk about real property, we're talking about land. Pausing. The term real estate is used throughout our society modern. In fact, we have realtors, which is those people who are engaged in the sale and the conveyance of the buying and selling of property, versus personal property. There's legal authority that goes along with this, oftentimes at multiple levels of government, from the municipality to the more grand. I'm going to pause because there's a vehicle driving by. Okay, I'm back. Interesting thing about land boundaries and real estate, if you will, is that the rights that are associated with land are kind of like a bundle of sticks, a basket of sticks, if you will, where individual rights might be individually conveyed, sold, or owned by the individual owners. The concept of a fee owner. Now, fee is one of those legal terms that sounds like there's a cost associated with it. In this particular definition of fee, it means the simplest, most grand form of land ownership, where you own all rights to the land, at the surface, above the surface, below the surface. And yet, there are other types of estates that allow you to use someone else's land, such as an easement or mineral rights and so forth. We continue on, and we're at slide 7 of this particular chapter, and we begin to see the principles that come in. And principle 1 of this chapter 1 says that a person or landowner can legally convey only the quality and quantity of the interest that he or she has title to. Now, that's kind of simple. It's easy to understand. You can't sell that which you do not own. But it brings up an interesting piece about rights in land versus ownership in land. The owner pays the taxes. Perhaps that's where the fee kicks in. Ownership in land means that you can permanently occupy it, you can build improvements on the land. A right in land means that you cannot occupy it, but you may have access. For example, you may have an easement that crosses someone else's property to gain a right of entry to your property. In this particular case, you cannot occupy that land, but yet your use of that land through the easement is guaranteed. It cannot be hindered by the owner to build a barricade to block your access, for example. Which means then that that person has an interest in the land. They have a financial interest, they perhaps have an access interest, but they don't have any right to occupy the land, to sell the land, or any of those types of things. When we move into the rest of land rights, we'll notice that the bulk of land laws relating to surveying come from common law, which is case law. Those cases that are judicially tried in a court of law that determine what exactly the limits of the interest are within a particular piece of property. And indeed, some pieces of our surveying law are based on statutory law, which comes from our legislative branch of government, where a bill is introduced, it's passed through committees, voted on, signed by the appropriate executive authority, governor, president, etc., and then it becomes law. So I'm going to move forward just two more slides here. The surveyor's responsibility for surveying of real property. Collect all of the written evidence that may exist for a particular piece of property. This might include deeds, surveying plats, title, insurance policies, etc. Anything that we can. Then we go to the field. We collect evidence to try to identify the corners of the property, to identify the lines that mark the limits And then we, of course, will need to perpetuate these boundaries, which means then perhaps we're going to produce a new written document, such as a survey plat or a certificate of survey. And we may actually have to put new monuments in the ground to replace those that are in disrepair or missing. In this case, we're acting in a quasi-public capacity. We're not an advocate for our client. We're trying to do that which is right. We're trying to protect our client's interest and his neighbors, as well as the general public. This is part of the reason for our Licensure Act. The lawyers, on the other hand, determine rights and interests, and they are advocates for their individual client. The intent of a particular thing is only used to clarify an ambiguity that may exist in the written writings. Here's an interesting piece that we see in our textbook. Mr. Robillard includes these important little quips in a little bracketed box in the textbook. What a boundary is a question of law. Where a boundary is a question of fact. Surveyors are involved with determining the facts. Okay, I'm going to back out away from this slideshow. I expect that you will complete that slideshow as well as the second slideshow here with creation. And you'll notice that they're aligned to the chapters. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 are your reading assignments for this particular unit. The unit's going to continue on with your first Integration of Principles paper, followed by and completing with a quiz. Thank you for your time and attention. By all means, feel free to post questions, ask questions, include questions in your integration paper, and remember always that we're trying to involve others in our discussions because that's what's going to really make this class feel connected. Thank you for your time and attendance. Good luck with Unit 2, everybody.